Thanks again so much, Dennis, for joining and for everyone else on this call. My name is Sally Stearns, and I'm the president of AAF Toledo, the host for this discussion today. And this is our September Coffee with Creatives discussion. So it's all around what makes an optimal marketing team. If you've attended one of these discussions before, they're definitely meant to be open, informal. It's not, in other words, a presentation where I'll go through a bunch of slides. Instead, what I'm going to do is kind of guide the discussion with questions and really encourage you to participate in any time whenever you have something to contribute. So I'm just hoping for a great and productive dialogue that kind of, invites all of your different perspectives, whether you're on the agency side, whether you represent an organization, or whether you're a student or freelancer. All of those perspectives will be super, super valuable to help kind of guide this discussion moving forward. So first, as I just kind of alluded to when talking to Dennis, I would love if we could all introduce ourselves. If you could just say your role, say if you represent an agency, an organization, freelance, or if you're a student at a university, that would be awesome. If you can't join via audio, feel free to just leave your introduction in the chat box. I would just love to kind of start from there to help us all get to know each other as we kind of take this discussion forward. So I'm going to go ahead and let Carrie start, because I see you on, Carrie. If you wouldn't mind giving us an introduction of yourself, that'd be great.
Sure. My name is Carrie Schwabel. I work for Cooper Smith. We're an agency here in Toledo. My role is ad hoc specialist. So I basically handle all the audio traffic for our clients and then any other special projects that we have going on.
Awesome. Thanks, Carrie. Scott, you want to go next?
Yep, my name is Scott Grossfond. I'm the marketing manager at a company here in Toledo called Impact Products. We are a large manufacturer distributor of safety, PPE, and janitorial supplies. I oversee a department of, I think, 4 designers. I've got 3 here in Toledo and 1 in Connecticut at another location. So we handle everything from the website to brochures, the packaging design, and kind of the marketing manager and creative director for all that.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. All right, Corey, I'm going to put you on blast because I know you just joined. I asked everyone just to introduce themselves. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your role at the company you work for.
Absolutely. My name is Corey Kriaski. I'm born and raised in Toledo. I used to work at Hanson with Sally a long time ago, and then worked at Madhouse for a bit, and now I work for Podium. They're a software company based out of Utah. I do animation.
No, that was great. Thank you. I'm excited for you to join this because you have perspective to share on the agency side and on the corporation side. So thanks, Corey. And I'm glad you covered both in your introduction because I was going to get to that at some point. Would anyone else like to chime in before I kind of get started with our topics? I don't want to put any other individuals on blast. So if you just want to chime in, feel free. If not, I can go ahead and get started.
Hi, I am Sonia Quinn, and I am the Marketing Outreach Coordinator for NAMI Greater Toledo.
Awesome. Thank you for joining.
Hi, my name is Sharmella. I'm a student as well as the owner of Revamp CC Studio in Toledo, Ohio. It's a salon photography studio and an art gallery. And this is probably my second Coffee with Creatives. So. Awesome.
Thrilled to have you. Thank you for joining and introducing yourself. All right. And I know, Dennis, we heard from you. Oh, yay. We have a new face. I'd love for you to, I interacted with you via email. I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Welcome.
Hello. Hi,
Hello.
my name is Jaron. I work with Brown Insurance. I am the brand and technology leader. Anything marketing and branding funnels through me, from our corporate guidance to any agency work that we get from outside, and really work closely with our office lead and sales team, kind of making sure that they stay consistent and compliant with what we need.
Great. Yay. Excited about everyone's backgrounds. I think this will be an awesome discussion just based on all of your different roles and the people you interact with and the teams that you're a part of. It's definitely going to drive a lot of my questions and discussions. So thank you all for joining. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I have some questions prepared, like I mentioned, but before I get to that, I'll more formally introduce myself. So I mentioned I'm the president of AAF Toledo. I am the host for this discussion, but I am also the marketing manager of Hanson Inc. And we're actually an integrated marketing agency based here in town, as Corey alluded to in his introduction. So I am going to be providing hopefully some helpful or interesting perspectives from the agency side. That's actually where all of my experience lies. I actually joined this agency once I graduated college and have kind of continued on that path ever since. So a lot of my experience relates to the agency side specifically. And then I can, of course, speak to and would love to get inputs from the corporate side. You know, in my experience, it's all about working with clients. But I know from many of your perspectives, like Jaron, how you just mentioned, you are the client in some cases, right? You interface with different professionals and perhaps different agency people as you kind of partner with different organizations. So I'm excited to kind of hear about your experiences and, you know, contribute to this overall conversation. So I thought we would begin by kind of introducing the what this topic was all about. So we really kind of, when brainstorming the topic for this Coffee with Creatives, we were wondering, okay, what's a topic we've never talked about before? What's something that is kind of fundamental to who makes up our organization that we haven't really fully dived into yet? So that's where we kind of took further conversations and thought we've never really dug into the world of marketing as an entity and what different roles make up a marketing role in this industry. So that's kind of what inspired this. And we purposely named this "What's Your Ideal Marketing Team?" because I honestly think that the answer to that can be very personal. It can be very dependent on the organization you represent, the background you have, the business goals that you're trying to achieve. There's really a lot that could depend upon what your answer to this might be. But for the sake of kind of starting the conversation, I thought I could kind of give you an idea of what my optimal marketing team would look like just based on research and my experience in this industry. And you'll see when I run through these roles here, you'll definitely recognize many because a lot of you represent some of these roles that I mentioned, but maybe there's roles that you've never considered. Maybe there's roles that I missed. It's a large list, but I definitely know that it can even encompass so much more. So when doing research, when reflecting on this, here are the different roles or teams that I kind of put in on paper just as an exercise. It could encompass a brand strategist, business analyst, social media specialist or team, SEO optimization specialist or team, paid media specialist or team. There's also the whole creative side, which is largely what I know a lot of us represent. So there's everything from content creation on a visual design standpoint, copywriting standpoint, video specialists and teams. And then also in the digital world specifically, there's the web side of it all. So there's a perhaps web designer, there's a web developer, even, you know, as it relates to front-end development and the software engineering side of things. And then lastly, when it comes to, you know, the external side of marketing, which I know is largely an external, that's fundamentally what marketing is taking your brand and finding ways to drive it externally. But there's the whole PR side of it as well, which I know drives a lot of core fundamental marketing roles. So whether that's a PR specialist, a full PR team, whatever that may look like, that's certainly something very, very important as it relates to the marketing side of things as well. And I believe it has really taken different forms over the, you know, last couple decades, even as we kind of escalated from traditional marketing to the digital side of marketing and what that has looked like. So that's my stab. And again, I mentioned it was a rough stab just upon reflection and some research. Are there any roles that I didn't cover? Anything that you think is very, very core to a marketing team that you believe should be on this list? Or is there any particular role on this list that you have a question about? Anything anybody wants to contribute to start off?
Okay. I was going to say a project manager, especially moving to Podium where everything's about the same company, obviously, but it's just like I don't know, the huge amount of projects that can come across your desk in a month. Having a project manager is so crucial, and it's become more important than any other director positions or any of the other management positions. Just somebody like keeping things in the right lanes and moving.
Definitely. Yep. And that's one I didn't cover in this, but you're right. I mean, that's the very core function of a marketing team, right? They're essentially the traffic controller that makes sure that you get what you need on your creative side, but also the client gets what they need on their side in terms of expectations. So definitely think that that's something they also keep everything moving on time, on budget, all of those things that we're all familiar with. And there's also the account side of it all too. So I know functionally, like at an agency specifically, and a lot of this gets into different layers. So when I listed that list, I think that can encompass a marketing team at a corporation or organization, but it can also encompass how an agency is structured as well. So agencies typically have specific departments that may cover many of these roles that I mentioned, but they also have, specific underlying roles that are important, like the project management role, the account director role, like that fundamentally interact with the corporation to make sure that the agency is, delivering properly what is expected on the other side. So I think that's an important level to even talk about in this conversation too, is, how those different functions can be different depending on what kind of team or company you're talking about. So that's important too.
To that point, and kind of bouncing off of Corey a little bit,
Mhm.
I'm a team of one in my office here. And so when you were going through all those, I saw those less as individual roles and more like, oh, those are all the things that I do on a day in, day out basis. And so
Sure.
Corey kind of beat me to the punch of saying project manager, because I might be the branding technology leader as a title,
Mhm.
but at core, I'm a project manager for all these different things. So I think Corey hit it on the head for sure, of like,
Mhm.
to make sure these things run on the opposite side of the agency, the actual, for you guys, client side,
Mhm.
making sure all of these things fit in their lanes, are getting done simultaneously, interconnected, fit the vision of the company itself is
Mhm.
extremely important when it comes to like actually getting our jobs done.
Absolutely. Yes, that's a really, really great point. Many people have a lot of those specialties and take on so much as a one-person role. And I found too that even doing research by looking at like job descriptions for marketing managers or marketing specialists, sometimes it's a generalized title, but when you read the description, you see all of these, maybe not all, but you see many of these roles listed within it. They want you to be able to manage the website, manage the SEO, report on metrics. They want you to understand the brand. Obviously, that's a very functional piece of it, is helping drive your brand forward. But it's just crazy to think that it can be one person as a one-person show. It is doable. You're living representation of that for sure. And it's a lot. I mean, I think that's important to really talk about too, because of the various functions, the role of marketing in general takes a lot of education. You have to constantly be, up to speed on these different areas because things are constantly changing. Nothing is ever the same as it relates to this world that we're living in. So I think that's a great point to bring up. Does anyone else have multiple roles within their current role out of this list that I mentioned? Scott, I'm wondering if you do, I know you manage a team as well. Oh, you're muted, Scott, sorry.
Sorry, my boss had moved in. Yeah, that when you were bringing that up, I was, when you were mentioning all those roles, I mean, as an internal team of, not an agency, but as an internal team of a corporation, we're a marketing department of, 5, right? And we handle the marketing for, we just kind of merge with another company. So, our responsibilities and my responsibilities have grown a little bit. So, we do a little bit of everything. We do web content, and what we may hire out for specific things that we need, but most of the time it's all in-house. Anything from project management to media buys or ad buys to, you name it. So we don't have the, I wish we did, but we just don't have the luxury of being able to afford, to freelance out a lot of this stuff, like our website, we do have a company here in Toledo that handles that. But as far as updates, they have a CMS system that allows us to do all our web, basically most of the web updates and everything that need to be done, we can do in-house. So yeah, we do, video editing, video shooting, photography, unless we have some high-end photography that we need. Most of it's done in-house. We're lucky enough to have our own studio here with equipment and, a nice video camera and still photography and lights and all that stuff. So we can do a lot of that stuff in-house, but, there are occasions where we need to do a little bit more high-end stuff that we'll hire out, but most of it's all in-house, and most of all those roles are taken up by either myself or the other manager who's a data manager. So that's I guess that's the advantage and disadvantage of being small and being mighty, I guess, right? So you take that all on.
Absolutely. Small but mighty. That's a good,
right,
that's a good key phrase to take out of this.
You do a lot,
Absolutely. Carrie, I'm curious then. So I want us for a second to talk about the agency side, and Corey, feel free to jump in as well. But I mentioned even in a past part of the conversation, how those roles are commonly kind of grouped together or even segmented out to develop larger teams on an agency. So Carrie, I would love for you to talk maybe for a second about how your agency over at Cooper Smith is kind of segmented. What are your different teams that are kind of involved within your agency structure specifically?
Yeah, so you pretty much said it. It's a team. And it's sort of kind of what Scott and Corey were alluding to. It's a case-by-case basis. Like
sure.
One size fits all. These are the jobs. Yeah, at a bigger corporation, you're going to have a certain dedicated individual for each of those responsibilities that you're listed out. But it's almost like it's working together, at least at our agency. Like, okay, like this is on my plate. These are the things that I'm doing. These are the things that you're doing. Okay, well, we got a new project that I have to work on. So can I slide this over to you? And as time goes on and you begin to develop your skills and you get better at things, like maybe you're not the best at Google Ads. You do it for 6 months, 8 months, and you start getting better and you're more efficient at it, and you start taking on more work. So it's kind of like an ebb and flow of work, skills, and the team members in your department that you kind of work together, and you just have to have the mental dexterity to jump ship from one task to the other, whether that's, managing a project yourself or working with, 4 other team members to manage the project, or working with a client to manage a project. So it's for us, it's kind of like all hands on board and just work as a team together, whatever needed. Yes, individuals have their roles. Like, hey, you're doing this and you're doing that. But I think the biggest thing for us is just teamwork and making sure everything's covered.
Awesome. Yes, I agree. It's very much a all hands on deck from the agency perspective, because obviously what we want to do is make sure we're putting the best work out for our clients, and many of us have multiple clients that we're working on any given day, week, month, whatever it may be. So yes, I think it's largely you're all driving towards that bigger goal, right? And you're partnering with your client from that perspective to make sure that they're happy, that they're getting what they were expecting, and that you're also, providing an extra value to them, because obviously, like Scott was saying, sometimes you hire an agency like he does for his website to fulfill or augment a need that maybe you don't have in-house, or maybe you have a specific allocated budget for. Maybe it's something that you and your organization decide this is the time to bring this agency on for XYZ, and then the agency is responsible for fulfilling that and kind of acting as an extension of your team, given the specific specialties that they have. So just kind of also adding to that, I think what's also important to talk about too is a lot of agencies are fundamentally marketing agencies, right? So we all specialize in marketing as an agency, but there are different specialties, whether you're a digital agency, you're a video agency, you're specifically a creative or design industry. Some encompass all of those things. Some may be niche in their specific specialties. And in Toledo, we have a lot of agencies that represent both. I think that's a very unique and exciting thing about Toledo is that you have agencies of different sizes and scales, but you also can understand, because there aren't an overwhelming number of them, you also can really understand where their specialties lie just based on visiting their websites or knowing who their partners are, or, you know, seeing them at the Addy Awards, whatever it may be. I think it's an awesome thing that, you know, Toledo has, is these companies that can really, you know, fulfill the needs of the different corporations we have in Toledo, just based on the teams they've been able to build up and the ways they've evolved over time. Does anyone else want to comment on this topic? I know we kind of started talking about the agency side, and I know we have a lot of people that represent that side, but also the corporation side, given our introductions, and freelance side. So maybe one of our freelancers wants to talk about what this world could look like from a freelance perspective. I'm kind of wondering if you as a freelancer might take on all of these roles, or if you might specialize in one of them as a freelancer, given the service you provide.
Well, I'll jump in. Since I'm an old newspaper guy and I did marketing for the symphony, and that was a great experience. That was just a sweet gig. But moving down here in May, because of my wife's job, I've been trying to reach out to other communications professionals, and because I'm solely I'm a writer and editor, and so I'm looking for content work. And actually, like I said, Wright State is bringing me on board to do some writing for their alumni magazine and oversee the production of their alumni magazine. But I'm meeting with people at different agencies and a couple other different colleges. But again, mine's pretty focused on solely writing and editing. And so I'm amazed that everyone here seems to be multi-talented. So it's great.
Awesome. Yeah, but it sounds like, Dennis, even from your Toledo sympathy, I can't say it, role, you covered all of marketing. So what was that role like specifically? You said it was an awesome experience. Did you cover many of these?
That was fun. Well, the big thing that I did, and I was only there for not quite 2 years,
sure.
Is, like you say, media relations, because I joined it in late 2015. And I just needed to, I guess the phrase is raise the level of awareness. Mm-hmm. And because of my media background, my newspaper background, and I knew people at other newspapers, and I wasn't afraid to pick up the phone or to find it or find an email for somebody. And I connected with the TV stations, radio stations, and actually there's an old newspaper saying, because you got to go out, you got to pound your turf. Meaning if you're a reporter, you go out and you visit the people who in the community you're covering. And I did that with a couple of places, especially WGTE. They wanted to meet with them because they play classical music. And I remember, I can't remember his name. He's on air personality, really cool guy, great voice. And he said, "Boy, I wish I could get Toledo Symphony artists and staffers on here." I said, "Well, okay, I can make that happen." And we did. I mean, and it's a role that's grown after I left. So the fun part for me was reaching out to different media and getting our symphony staffers and musicians and guest artists on camera and on radio and in print.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think that is a perfect transition into something I wanted to talk about next, which is the whole brand awareness side of marketing, right? Like I mentioned, I think in a passing comment, what marketing is really centered around as an industry is making your audiences aware of who you are, right? It's helping people understand what your business does, what you're capable of, what services you provide, what products you sell, whatever it may be. And so I'm curious, from your different perspectives, what are some key kind of ways in which you might approach your role, given that that's your largest goal, is to drive awareness to your brand? How would you go about doing that? What are some key, projects you do, or key strategies you set? What is fundamental when it comes to setting the strategy for your brand? Anyone want to chime in? I could talk about strategy all day, so I'm happy to take it, but I'm curious if anyone has anything to say just about setting that strategy and using that to kind of, push your message out there to the world.
I actually keep up with my social media content, like far as Instagram, or there's a page for Facebook for a revamped CC Studio. It's important to stay constant with it, because people forget, if they don't see it as much, they kind of get lost in the sauce. Also, I try to keep my website interesting. I change it with the season sometimes, and even with the actual logo itself. Even with the logo itself, sometimes I'll change it for the fall or for holidays to keep, just keep it relevant,
I love it.
And then I'm involved with art. So I have an art gallery, but I also do hair and photography. So if I want to focus more on the art aspect, because I have 2 pages, there's one strictly for art, one strictly for hair, because I figure people are getting confused with both. So if this year I was at the Ann Arbor Art Fair. And so I would just post every moment, that I could capture of my experience there, where I felt like they were vicariously going through the experience with me. So I don't know, try to make the viewers feel like they're a part of it, so they can feel like they too is the brand, or
Yeah. No, I love that. Go ahead.
Sharmel, I think you said it the first couple words, keeping up, which is a big thing with branding, and it ties into another aspect of marketing, but we don't have to go into it. But SEO is part of having a good SEO, is just keeping your content updated, having a consistent branding message out there, keeping that consistent logo. But then also, as time goes on, making small changes to that, and that's part of keeping up with it too. So, but those are all kind of factors of SEO that tie into branding. So.
And I think another important piece of what you said too, I got a lot out of your conversation, or a lot out of your contribution, because social media is obviously a very important way of reaching your audience. But I also think it's interesting that you separated, or you segmented, just to use a marketing term, out your different pages, like you said, just based on your different aspects of your business. So you said hair and art. And you did that, I can understand, to really make sure you're reaching the right people, or people know where to go if they'd like to receive a specific message or get updates about a specific piece of what you provide. So I think that's a whole nother aspect of marketing too, is understanding your audience and knowing how to reach them in meaningful ways, whether that is, paying attention to a specific social platform, whether that is creating multiple social platform channels or microsites, whatever it is. It can get very, nuanced, but I think at the very core of what you said, it really is about knowing what they're looking for and helping them understand that you are capable of providing that to them. So however you act on that as a marketer is, kind of your answer to the way that you know them in a way. Anyone else have anything to add on this topic, just about branding in general, or, how you might best position your company or agency for success given your role?
So one of the things I find interesting about everything that's kind of stemmed from all this is it seems very B2C is what we're talking about. And with what I work in a lot is very B2B. And so although I really would love to get more on our social media and focus that audience content and everything like that, where we find more of our success is supporting the salesmen that are actually getting in front of the HR people and those that make the decisions in our space, which then pivots to a different type of content and goes a little bit more on like the old school traditional side of things of making the flyer or updating their presentation materials to go physically sit in front of either via iPad or whatever at this point, and have that twist on it, which I don't know. I don't really have a point to this other than I just find it interesting of how like we're saying the same things, but also can be parallel to in some ways.
Yeah. No, I think that's a huge piece of it too, because as marketers, we understand that B2B or B2C, or as one of my coworkers likes to say recently, it's all B2P. It's all, you're providing to people in general. She loves using that and kind of twisting those common terms in that way. But I think that's important too. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was kind of my next larger topic of this conversation, which is working either across different departments or working with a creative agency. So it's just this overarching topic of collaboration. And you bring up a good point just as it relates to working with your sales team, right? So as a marketer, as you're in your role, what you're doing is helping, drive their success through the materials you create or the messages that you write, whatever it is. You're ultimately, depending on that collaboration to give them what they need. And the same can be true for an agency, right? We're collaborating with each other, but we're also collaborating with our client to make sure that, we're giving them what they need, and people are doing their roles appropriately to make sure that the project is successful. So this brings me to one of my questions then, just to kind of set the stage. What do you guys think is most helpful when it comes to collaborating with, internal teams, with a client? What are some, key things that you've taken away as it relates to what makes collaboration successful?
It's that initial conversation.
Sure.
Because you're describing on the agency side of you're working with individual clients, but I've got 3 different departments and 5 different guys that are out in the field. And each one works differently in kind of the same way I imagine you're working with individual clients on your side.
Yeah.
So just having that initial conversation of expectation, what's the end goal, what's the process to get to that end goal, whatever it might be, to set up those expectations. Because if you don't set up expectations, it's a project doomed to fail. Because I just yesterday, for not even a branding thing, just a tech thing, had a conversation with a teammate in one department on designing a new communication flow for internal team stuff. And we brainstormed for like an hour of just like, how could this work? What needs to happen? All right, these are all the options in place. Go back to your team, figure out what they want, and then we'll come back and then start rollout. And so it's just like if you don't have that initial piece in any respect, project won't get finished.
Absolutely. Yep. It's all about that original conversation and the way you kind of set whatever it is up for success, right? You need to make sure that the audience is clear, that you know what business goals you're trying to achieve. Those are all very important pieces for everyone involved to understand, no matter which side you're coming from. I think that if we really had to boil it down, it definitely, is attributed to that specifically. Scott, I'm curious from your perspective, because I know working at your company, I'm assuming in your role, you also work very closely with sales as marketing, but please correct me if I'm wrong. How does that work within your company specifically?
Yeah, so we work really closely with the sales department, and like I said, recently we kind of merged with another company, so we added 6 or 7 new sales people, right, from the other company as well. So we're servicing them as well. So it's just kind of, a lot of it's managing expectations. A sales guy may say, look, I need X, Y, and Z, and as much as you can try to help them, you can only give them X and Y sometimes. So, and they understand that. I mean, they're trying to sell to their, our customers to get that out there. So, we do what we can. So, but yeah, it's a daily juggling act with sales and our product development team, working with them. as far as, our new products coming on board, what do we have to do with that? And one of the things we're doing right now is, we're rebranding all of our disposable gloves, because the company we merged with, they sold gloves, we sold gloves. So we're kind of bringing all that all together, and going back to your branding conversation is like, okay, we've got these two companies that are very similar as to what they sell. At least the one company, sells the majority of PPE, gloves and masks and disposable clothing, whereas we sell and manufacture all of that, plus, janitorial stuff like mop buckets and ringers, and, very exciting cutting edge items, right? But so we're kind of in the process of trying to merge some brands together, right? So the next few months will be kind of a challenge and exciting to see. But yeah, working with sales guys every day, and sometimes you kind of roll your eyes when they come into your office, or they send you an email saying they want this or they want that, and you're just like, okay, whatever. And you just have to send them an email back, or go to their office and tell them, look, I can do this for you now, but this other stuff's, is going to take longer, right? So they just can't get stuff at a snap of a finger. And I've learned that over the years, that like I said, managing expectations is a big part of going forward, and helping them achieve what they need to do, because obviously they're the front, they're the end. I don't know if I'm going to say that right. They're responsible really for sales and everybody who makes a living, right? So they're selling the product. Now we have a whole warehouse and manufacturing facility of making that product, but if they're not selling, then we're not manufacturing. So they need to have the best foot forward into that room with potential customers as we can give them. So I think there's a certain amount of pride involved from a marketing team to know that what we're giving them is the best that we can give them, and that we know that they've got the equipment and tools they need, at least from our department, to do their job, right? So
Great. Yeah, I can imagine that's very important. What you do helps fuel their success, which then fuels the entire company's success. So
it's like a circle, right? It's
very much.
It's a whole everybody helps everybody else, right?
Yeah.
So,
and on the end of managing expectations, I know Corey just put a comment in the chat box all about agreeing with that and understanding scope. So I just want to make a comment from the agency side of things, because I think what's important from that perspective is in order to manage expectations, in order to start a project off on the right foot, right? What we like to receive, or what we expect to receive in collaboration with our client, is some sort of assignment brief, creative brief, whatever that may be. It's a brief in structure that kind of outlines, here's what we're trying to achieve, here's who we're trying to reach, and these are the different, key considerations or key messages, whatever that is. So then as the agency, we take that brief and we say, okay, we're coming up with a solution, but everything that we come up with needs to meet these goals, right? If we're not crossing, if we're not checking these boxes, if we're not laddering up everything that we do according to the expectation, the scope, the budget, all of those things, then we're not doing our jobs right. So I think just in terms of like a output or a functional, tangible thing that kind of helps collaboration and helps ensure success, we really rely on those briefs to help drive everything that we do moving forward. And what that really can take the shape of is, a lot of the times, like our project manager or our account manager will work directly with the client to write that brief. So it's very much a partnered effort to make sure that everyone's in agreement and we're all working towards the same goal and aligned on what we're trying to achieve. So I just think if we had to kind of boil it down to one tangible action item, it would be from the agency side, aligning on that brief and making sure that we achieve it just by the next process and next steps of the project. Anything else you want to say, Corey, on that, or does that cover what your comment was getting to as it relates to the scope?
Well, I was going to say on top of the scope, or along with the scope, knowing when to tell, whether it's your client or another team that you're working with, knowing when to tell them no, and also knowing when you're not the expert. There are definitely times where people will come to us and they'll say, oh, can we do something I've never heard of? And I'm just like, I don't want to promise you this and then feel stress in 2 days when I'm supposed to deliver. So yeah, just that, like, sometimes blunt honesty of like, I can't do that. And that's also not what we agreed to. It helps a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that being honest is definitely important, right? I mean, there's only so much we can hold. There's only so much we are able to be experts in. So I think that just having those conversations and laddering it back to this isn't what we agreed upon, or, a brief in this case can be really specifically helpful, just documentation to say, hey, this wasn't, mentioned here, this wasn't part of the scope or whatever. It can just be something that you can, reference or have in writing to kind of make sure that it, that your response makes sense given what the original ask was. But I do think that what you said just kind of traces back to what we were saying about how as marketers, we are expected to be experts in marketing, but as we kind of mentioned when we went through all those different roles, that means a lot of things. And it's definitely hard to be experts in all of those things. So what are some kind of resources or tips or tricks that you guys use as marketers to kind of stay up to date with the latest? Does anyone have any go-to, publications or blogs or social media channels, whatever, to make sure that you're up to date on, the latest and greatest? I can start. Mine's TikTok. So I previously co-hosted one of these all about TikTok, one of these Coffee with Creatives conversations. And I found that because I've been on it since the beginning of the pandemic, my algorithm has gotten to know me over time, which we could talk about algorithms all day in marketing, but I am now getting, very, very specific targeted TikToks all about marketing, whether it's, I have this one girl that's constantly popping up that talks about the agency side of marketing, and she talks about keywords and agency marketing. And, she goes on and on and on explaining a bunch of things, but it also helps me keep up to date with recent trends, things people are talking about, areas within marketing that people are really, 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 specialized in. Like I found different UX TikToks, all about user experience, and they take websites and just take that 60-second TikTok to be like, this experience could be improved in XYZ. They're tangible, digestible videos to just give me content that maybe I didn't think about before, or maybe it's something that introduces a new way of thinking. So I'm on the TikTok train. I'm not afraid to admit it. Definitely a fan, but I'm curious if anybody else has any other resources or places they go to stay up to date.
I think the easiest one, sorry.
Go ahead, Corey.
I think the easiest one is looking at your competition and seeing what they're doing. And if that aligns with your goals, taking something from that.
Sure.
Or if you don't have competition, or I don't know, if there's some issue there, looking at somebody from another industry or an adjacent industry and see, like, are there things that they're doing that we could adopt that could help us be successful? And just testing all of those out, like not making huge commitments to any of those strategies, but just seeing what works.
Love that.
Yeah, I kind of have a two-headed answer here, but we work with a lot of vendors at the agencies, so obviously we get a lot of great information from them, and then once we get the information from them, we can go on and do our own research if we have to become experts in that area. But the app that I use is called Flipbook, and it's sort of like a social media app, but it generates news articles. So based on trends and what your choices are, you kind of tailor it to yourself, and it gives you some good articles, relevant and specific to what you're interested in.
What's it called, Carrie? Flipbook?
Flipbook, it's an app.
Flipbook. Okay. I figured that was what it was, but wanted to confirm. Yeah, I've never heard of that. That sounds like an awesome way just to get, I'm sure Dennis likes the idea of that, getting news articles that are related to what you care about. That's awesome. And I think too, just going back to what Carrie said, competitive analysis is huge. So a lot of what we do on the strategy side of things when we are working with a client is, we have a whole strategic planning phase typically, depending on the scope of the project. But part of that strategic planning phase, as we get to know a client, as we understand their industry, we dedicate an allocated number of hours to understanding their competitors, knowing what they're doing right, knowing what they're doing wrong. Sometimes that's even part of our presentation that we give back to the client when we help, identify the solution. We'll say, hey, your 3 competitors are here. Here's what they're doing right. Here's what they could be doing better. And here's where you fit in, right? Like sometimes that is such a key part of the process of marketing, is understanding where you can fall in the overall competitive set, how you can stand out, what makes you different, what different messages you have to put out there. Because ultimately you're largely probably talking to the same audiences, but it's all about how you can do that in different or meaningful ways. And I think the best way to do that is absolutely what Corey said. It's digging into those and maybe doing something formal like an analysis, or maybe just understanding them at the highest level, like you mentioned, Corey, and just kind of knowing that as you continue on with setting your strategy or coming up with your solution or making marketing materials, whatever that may be. I think I'm glad you brought that up because that's definitely a huge part of this. Anyone else have anything that they use to keep up to date or want to talk about competitors or anything we've been referencing? All right, I think everyone's going to go download Flipbook and TikTok, right? If you don't have them already, we are in no way paid to advertise either of those apps, just so you know.
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe someday now. All right. Well, those are all of my biggest topics that I wanted to make sure we covered today. But I wanted to leave a couple of minutes at the end before kind of giving my concluding statements to leave it open forum. If anyone has a question, a topic, if you want to, given what everybody's contributed, if you have a question for a specific person on the call that you want to direct to them, if you want to talk about agency or corporate side specifically, now's the time to do it. If anyone has anything we didn't cover that you hoped we would cover today, go ahead and jump in now. Scott's playing the Jeopardy music in his head as he tilts it back and forth.
I was going to say on brand strategy, it was always interesting working at Madhouse because I think the perception of them is that they're mysterious and like they're not able to be contacted. And so it was interesting because they put content out on their website, but they wouldn't push it necessarily on social media or anything like that.
Sure.
And on top of that, they never had a new business person. So it was strange. Like they grew from forging good relationships with the people they worked with and then word of mouth. And I think they're like 16 years old at this point. So it's wild that they could just perpetuate the business for that long.
Yeah.
On top of that, for Podium, I feel like our marketing success is going to be telling human stories about our customers. A lot of the things we do right now are just talk about our products, and I don't think that anyone really cares. Like obviously they need a solution for we do business or messaging tools for local business, I think is how we talk about it. But if you're looking for something and it just says, oh, messaging tools for local business, you don't care. You want to see another company that's having similar struggles as you or that endured some sort of hardship and see how they got through that. And like, hopefully Podium's a tiny part of that story. I know Square does really well with their customer story videos where it's like, this business is just starting out and they needed all of these things to happen and they had whatever bad stuff happen to them. And also they process payments through Square. And it's like you see their product once and it's just this tiny little bit. It's like removing yourself from their story almost works in your favor.
I love that. Yeah, so much of marketing today really is about humanizing. I think that could be its own coffee with creatives, right? I mean, there's so many clients that I work with that I do suggest things like that. Like, hey, you're only pushing your products out there. Like, let's talk about the people behind your products. Let's, relate to your audience on a human level, because as my B2P comment was alluding to, we're all people first. And the role of marketing really tries to functionalize or formalize specific areas. But when it comes down to it, as marketers, what we're really trying to do is be people talking to people, no matter what company we represent, no matter what team we're part of. We're people solving problems, reaching audiences that are ultimately people. And I think the fact that you realize that at your own company, Corey, is huge, because I think it just takes people like us that, are the first ones to say something or realize it, or be the one to take that leap and start posting content that maybe is brand new to, what we're used to, or even suggest it to somebody that can actually go out and make a quick video or take a photo or submit a testimonial, whatever it is. I think it takes the empowerment from us in our roles to really help drive that forward and, make the receivers of our messages a little bit more understanding of who we are just through the ways that we're trying to reach them. So I'm glad you ended on that, because I think that's a really key thing, and something that I think we can all maybe hopefully take a piece of away from this. Any other closing questions or comments? Go ahead, Dennis.
Yeah, along the same line, there's a woman here in Dayton who has started her own business as developing stories, teaching people how to be storytellers.
Sure.
And her are very often in the business world, the high tech world, where they're really bright about their product or something. Something high tech, but or they have to make a presentation. She gets them to develop stories to make things more easier to listen to, more human. She has that's her niche.
Wow. Built a whole business on telling stories. I mean, that's huge. It's something so key to what we do. And the fact that somebody is able to make a whole business and a living off of it just speaks to how important and critical it is, especially in our world. That's a great example of just exactly what we're talking about. So thanks for sharing. All righty. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. I think this was an awesome conversation. I really appreciated even just getting to know you all and your backgrounds a little bit further and hearing the different perspectives that you shared. So we really, really appreciate you jumping on this conversation. Before I adjourn and close this meeting, I want to let you know of one or two of our upcoming events. So actually September 22nd at 11:30 a.m., we are hosting a lunch and learn all about how to host a kick-ass podcast. And that will be hosted by Carrie, who is here with us today. He, as he mentioned, is an audio specialist within his agency. So he was actually able to get his president and CEO, Brad Rieger, and the one and only Chris Peterson, who both host their own podcasts, to be our guest presenters and speakers for this conversation. So it will be virtual, just like this. It will just be at a different time. So 11:30 a.m. is when it'll start. We'll likely wrap up between 12:30 and 1 p.m. And you'll hear from both of them. You'll be able to ask them questions all about podcasting. Maybe you'll be inspired to start your own after that. But the whole intent is really just to understand what inspires them, what their tips and tricks are, and anything else that they might want to cover. Speaking of tips and tricks, I did not mean to just fall right into my next one. Our next Coffee with Creatives will be in October, and that one is going to be all around photography tips and tricks. So we'll actually have another AAF Toledo board member. His name's Rob Lorenzo, and he's actually a photographer for Cardinal Stritch. He's the marketing manager for Cardinal Stritch and does all of their sports photography. And he also is recently a photographer for ESPN in Cleveland. which I'm personally excited about because he takes a lot of their sports photos. I've seen him on the field with the Browns and a bunch of other larger organizations. So I'm sure he'll have a lot of important and interesting insights to share. And if you're interested in photography or just want to learn more about it, I encourage you to RSVP to that conversation. We will put the information up on our website here shortly. We're currently getting the creative together, but you will be able to register for that here shortly. Just pay attention to our social media channels for when that will get up there so you can register. And I believe that's it. Carrie, do you have anything else before we sign off, or did I cover it?
You covered it. Did a great job.
Thank you. Well, thank you all so much. We really appreciate you being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye.
Bye.